Hi there, Sandy.
Great.
This is my birthday.
That is great. That is.
I can hear you, but I can't see you yet.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, Sandy. I can hear you. Hi.
Okay. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Sandy, Andrea, Jessica, Jesper. Welcome.
Hey.
There you go. Well, so to tell anyone who's new, the order of events here, we take the calls in the order that we've received your responses by email, and then after that, whoever's here. And then if somebody, so tonight, the responses, and they're timestamped, just to let you know. Sandy goes first, Nicole Fainson, if she's coming in, Andrea is third, Tanisha, Catherine, Danielle, and then Jesper, you are last, but we will try to get everybody's questions tonight. So Dave is coming on board in a few minutes, and just want to make sure that he's here. There he is. You muted yourself.
Another minute or two.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and start with welcome. We're 2 minutes early with you, Sandy, and your questions. So we see here that our grower, calendula and yarrow and broccoli.
So I have some broccoli that was there already. I don't know if broccoli should be multi-season or not. The kids like to pull off the leaves and call it a lollipop, so we've left it.
Oh, yeah. Great.
But
well,
so there's
let's see how they go in Arizona. So
okay.
Technically, broccoli is going to still make it in your area, I think. So that's
okay.
Onions. What kind of onions do you have?
Onions? Oh, we have the walking onions.
Oh, great. That's right. I think you mentioned that before. And then you said if for cover crops, you said if you use beans from your food storage for cover crop, will that still count? Any legume, use what you have is one of the permaculture principles.
Okay.
So if you have beans, especially if they're old and you're like, I might as well, use them and see if they're going to grow. And that I've done that many times. In fact, I have a challenge that I run in the wintertime that's called Plant Your Pantry, where you just every day for 5 days, you just pull something out of your pantry and start planting it and growing it. And it's a lot of fun. So those
We've planted popcorn before and got results. So. We haven't got it like to grow up to being a popcorn plant, but something grows and it's exciting for the kids.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. So your first question was, if doing chop and drop, should I be concerned about pests? What are you chop and dropping? And then for those who are not familiar with the term, Sandy, do you want to tell them?
Everything. Like we've been throwing all our table scraps. I just tell the kids after I'm like, go feed the tree. And so this is what it looks like under here.
Uh-huh.
So,
I see.
so we have corn husks, banana peels, and just, it looks like a compost pile that has nothing done to it.
Wow. What I would do is I would just put those underneath the palm tree leaves that you see there, just to, hello, Andrea. Yes. Just to make sure that they don't attract rodents, because we have had that problem as well. I mean, in our yard in the past. And then even if you could cover some soil or mulch over it, that would be good.
Okay.
And then limit your compost. So chop and drop technically means like anything that's close to your anything, like if you have a comfrey or some bushy plant that's just wild anyway, you want to trim it, you trim it, and then sometimes you trim a tree and you chop it. That's called chop and drop as well. Like Andrea, I know you have a question later on about pomegranate trees. So when you trim the trees, the limbs from the tree, you can chop and drop it there. But composting, we've done that too. Like you put your compost and your kitchen scraps directly to where it is. I mean, if it's, I usually make sure they're for my area, it's eggshells and banana peels, and I kind of chop them up a little bit more fine. So like a nice Montessori activity for the kids sometimes is I give them the mortar and pestle with the eggshells, and then they just do that, and then I'll feed it so that the absorption is faster and the decomposition is faster. Especially where you are, because it's so hot, it might not decompose as fast as where you were used to. Okay. So you want to make the...
It didn't decompose fast before either. I was just lazy about it. I'm like, if it's ready in a couple of years, whatever.
Yeah. No, but it's great. I'm glad that you're doing it. And so that you won't see the results this year. You'll see the results in the years to come, how rich that soil will be. So great job.
Okay.
There. Okay. Can I use beans? Yeah. And then...
You had a question about where to put your walking onions?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Dave. I have walking onions and a rose plant that I brought with me from our previous house. And I know walking onions, like I put them out hot under a palm tree and it died and it came back. So I know wherever I put them, they're going to last and they're going to come back and be there forever. So I want to choose wisely where I put them and want to make sure they're not going to like terrorize anything.
So they get pretty tall if you give them enough sun. So they're called walking onions because they'll get about, in an ideal situation, they'll get about, I'd say 2.5, 3 feet tall. And then they'll form little bulbils, that's what they're called, at the end of the stalk. That are actually, it almost looks like a little garlic bulb at the end of the stalk. And the weight of those bulbils will actually bend the stalk over, and it will literally walk and plant itself. So you can harvest, what we've done is you can actually harvest the stalks. They're pretty good. They have a kind of a garlicky taste to them. And you can harvest the bulbils as well. So since they get so tall, they will kind of flop. That's the only thing. So if it's kind of I would just think about the ornamental aspect of it. And if you don't watch where they bend over, they will plant themselves. Right. So they can spread that way. But you won't get like a huge amount of spread if you're worried about them becoming invasive.
Okay. I know that where I got them from, he's like, I pulled all these up and they're still there. I guess I didn't. And that's my kind of plant, is the kind that you can't get rid of. I just want to make sure if I put it somewhere, it's not going to be like, and by the way, these destroy citrus trees or something. They emit, I don't know. So I just want to make sure that they're not going to be mean to any of the plants I put them by.
So generally, alliums play pretty well with a lot of other annual crops. I don't think you have to worry too much about that. And
they're actually good for trees, fruit trees. I'm not sure citrus trees in particular, but I know in general for fruit trees, because they will act as weed suppressor, and just the the smell from the onions will deter bad pests. So I think they're always a good part of a tree guild. Alliums are. So
Okay.
yeah, put it around your trees, and then think also what else, so that's one layer. So this month, for you, Sandy, since you've been here since August, or yes,
It's my second month. Yeah.
yes, then this coming month will be all about the planting calendar, and then after that, if it's not this month, the layers, so different layers. So it'll be, step by step, so as not to overwhelm you. So walking onions, and then what else? You have a long, your temperatures are still quite high. So I'm just gonna share.
Yes,
so
the 100 degrees.
yeah. So everybody can see Gilbert, right? Arizona. Did I just share that?
No, we don't
No.
see anything.
Oh, sorry. Share. See if I can share that screen. There. Do you see that the temperatures now? Nothing.
Yeah, we see the temperatures.
Okay, so you can see that in your climate, you still have 61 degrees, and it'll drop down to the 50s this month.
Is that showing the general temperature or the
Average.
This is what it is now. Okay, because
Yeah,
right
so
now it's been hotter than that.
Yes. So the white parts are what they're predicting will be
Okay.
the next few weeks for you, and then
Yeah.
the rest of them are averages where it says AVG. And
Okay.
you can pull this up yourself on weather.com. Just plug in your zip code and then hit monthly, and you'll see this. So then it'll give you the averages, but as you can see, the averages are rising. So yeah. All right. So
I've been working on. I finally have almost wrapped up this printable on drylands. So
cool.
It's gonna come out in the next one day.
Awesome.
So,
Brad Lancaster is coming and doing a presentation in Phoenix in October. So
awesome.
I'm going to go and watch that.
oh my goodness. Well, then you can give us like a webinar on what you learned.
I'm excited. I wouldn't have heard of him if it wasn't for you. So I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, please take notes and share them with us. And yeah, we might touch base with you later, Sandy, so you can give us a little like mini webinar for GI wires on drylands. So great. Oh, thank you. All right. So is that good, Sandy? We're good for next month?
I just wanted to show you something else that I've been starting.
Okay, show me.
Can you see it?
Peas? Is that right?
It is moringa.
Oh no, really? That's moringa?
I found out it's cheaper to buy a pack of 100 seeds than it is to buy a sapling. So, like for $7, I have a pretty good odds of getting a couple viable plants out of that.
Awesome. Are they dwarf or are they full size? Are they full size moringas?
They are what was on Amazon. So I think they're the normal full size. We'll see what comes of it. It'll be a fun experiment.
Awesome.
Yay! Oh my gosh, yeah. That's so great. We love your spirit of growing, Sandy. It's so nice to see that.
I'm excited to be where there's such a long growing season. Where I left, I would be like getting ready for the frost to hit now.
You're right.
So it's cool.
Great. And that's what some of our next people are going to be experiencing. But yeah, so thank you. So I'll go ahead and mute you now. And Andrea, you are coming next. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good job, Sandy. Great. So, hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. And I saw your beautiful garden. Thank you for the pictures. Your pomegranate tree and your elderberry. Have you harvested that elderberry before or throughout the years? You've probably been doing that all your life. Or
Oh no, I didn't even know it was there. It's a volunteer. It just came up in the last 2 or 3 years. I kept seeing a different plant mixed up in my fig tree area, and I didn't know what it was. But this year's the first year that it bore fruit, and so the first little bit that I tried, that I harvested and tried, I heated it for too long, I think, and I wasn't comfortable with my results. So then when I harvested all of them, I followed this recommendation to put the bunches in the freezer and then take them out and take them off. And that was a disaster. It did not work well. They unfroze too fast, and I had a lot more little stems in it. And that was the purpose of freezing it, not to get the little stems, kind of like a grape stem. And so I only had like maybe 1 cup, most 2 cups that I could have tried to salvage of the berries. And I was just like, it's just not worth it. I'll know better next time.
Yeah, no, that's the nice thing about growing. You always know you get another chance next year. So that's great, though, that you have it there as your resource in your backyard, elderberry. So you tell us about your pomegranate tree, Andrea, and I'll see if I can pull up your picture here.
Well, it's an odd-looking mess, but it gave us, probably 10 to 12 pomegranates this year. And I think we've been growing it for 3 or 4 years. And we've gotten like 1 and then 2 1 year and then 4. And this is the best year so far. They're really good. They're yellow. The seeds are clear. They're not red.
Is it a less sweet variety?
No, actually, at first I thought they just weren't maturing, but I found on the internet that they're called a sweet pomegranate, and they're not supposed to be red, and they are sweet. They're good. So.
I'm jealous. I tried a hardy pomegranate up here last year, and it just did. I think it's because I tried to put it in too late. It just didn't survive our we had temperatures that went down to 6 degrees last year, and I think once it's established up here, we can get it to grow. But it's awesome that you're already getting some. But it's getting too big now. You were wondering how to prune it.
Well, I guess you can see from the picture that it's just all over the place. The branches are all entwined and going every which direction. I don't know what they're supposed to do, but that's what they're doing on their own. We don't pay much attention to that part of our yard, and so every once in a while we'll see orange blossoms or something, and we'll say, "Oh yeah, we have a pomegranate."
So even though I don't have direct experience with pomegranates, I did a quick investigation, and they're considered kind of like bushy trees in that category. So we have bloomies here and a couple other large shrubs, and I think from what I've seen that you tend to prune them the same way. So the key is, first of all, you want to wait till it's actually dormant before you do any pruning. So I'm not sure in Houston when that would be, but probably the late, whatever qualifies for the winter time. And
2 days.
Yeah, the 2 days of winter. And then the first thing you want to do is make sure you cut it down to height. So it's at a height that's manageable, because if you get these long branches that are way too high, you won't be able to, first of all, you won't get good fruit production because it's putting all of its effort into reaching up to the sky. And second of all, you can't reach it. So you want to prune it down to about 8 feet tall, just in a uniform way across the whole plant. And then after that, what you want to do, what we do with our gumi and with our gooseberries, is we try to clear out the interior so that there's good sun. All the smaller branches, all the weird interconnected branches, that you make sure you prune off all of those.
This is Andrea's pomegranate tree. And Andrea, checked your first frost is November 27 in Cyprus. And just like I told Sandy earlier, and everybody can benefit from this, if you look on weather.com, put in your zip code and click on the monthly tab, you can see what the temperatures are for that month, and you'll see the averages following, and here is like a little graphic of what it would be. So for Cypress, Texas, it's going to be in November, late November, November
We
20th.
can't see.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing the right screen.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back. There. It'll be late November that you'll hit your first frost, and then after then she can prune her pomegranate. That's what you're saying, right, Dave?
So late winter, so not first frost.
Oh,
but
sorry. So late winter.
I'd say like late January, February.
Here, based on her temperatures. When is the coldest month? January. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually had really cold weather last year for many days. We don't usually it even if it gets down under freezing, it's just during the night, and then it warms up in the day. But last year, people lost a lot of citrus trees. We lost our lime tree. I think it was last year. It could have been the year before. But we didn't lose the pomegranate.
I think pomegranate is actually a little hardier. They claim that it can get, some versions can get down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit without dying. So,
would you suggest mulching it, Dave, or
I think as a
heavily?
general rule, if it gets cold, what we do up here for fig trees and for things like that is I like to shred up a bunch of leaves and use that as a really thick mulch. And I think you could even put a little bit of compost underneath that, and that'll gradually break down. And as it breaks down, it'll actually generate some heat, and that'll be kind of trapped underneath the leaf matters or whatever mulch you use. So when I say thick mulch, I mean like a foot of mulch, but just around the root system. You don't care about so much about the upper portion as long as the root system is warm.
We have lots of pine needles.
But yeah, that would work.
So isn't that too acidic though?
I don't know. It just
Well, use what you have, right? Let's see what happens what it is basically a blanket to keep them warm. So, and then your next question, Andrea, about then how much shade can a lettuce tolerate, or greens? Did you mean lettuces or leafy greens, or what were you thinking?
anything green. We talked about Swiss chard last time, but kale or collards or anything like that. I've never grown them. I did grow spinach about 35 years ago once.
Well, I would say my experience with greens are the lettuces like the sunlight the most. So if you can get the lettuces into the sun more than the kale, yeah, and those ones would, because right now there's not going to be, it's the number of hours too, like six hours, and then based on your backyard, you look like you don't have a shade problem, I think.
That is the only area that doesn't have a shade problem, because we have, I don't know, 25 trees on a quarter acre.
Ah,
A lot of trees.
okay.
We came from the prairies where we had no trees, and now we have a lot of trees. We have like 100-foot tall trees.
So better trees than no trees.
Yes, yes, and I think you could get away with the lettuces and the kale with what the sunlight in the pictures let's experiment this year and put them out there. I don't think you'll have a problem, especially given your temperatures. So I'm going to share a document that might help other people too. One sec. And it's the planting calendar. And this is actually inside your resources in DIY. This coming month for many of you will be the planting calendar month. So when you watch the video or the webinar, it has a little button there that has this PDF that goes along with the webinar, and it shows you, this is the document that goes with that webinar. And it basically shows you how to classify what you have and what minimum temperatures certain vegetables have. So for instance, broccoli, the minimum temperature for broccoli is 40 and the maximum temperature is 90, that it will tolerate to germinate, that is. And lettuces are 35, I think. So you have a long time to grow them in your area, Andrea, because right now you guys are still in the 60s, 70s, and yeah, so oh, that's right, you're still in the 80s. So yeah, I think you'll be fine. I think you'll be fine because the greens are more, I think, temperature, sun also, but right now they would still survive. So I wouldn't be
I think
worried.
the key with getting lettuces is just getting them started, because once they get a little bit of a root system going, then they really take off. So it's actually good if you started some lettuces and you don't see a lot of top growth, because it's then putting all of its energy into creating a root system. And then once you transplant the lettuces, if they have a decent, even a little bit, a small little root system, you can get a full size head of lettuce from that in a month and a half if it's wet enough.
I do have a question that I didn't put in the question box. We have tomato plants, and they look really great. They've been there all summer, but they're not really blooming anymore. And I debate about, should I take them out and use that spot for other things, or?
So I'm pretty brutal. If a thing is not producing, then, and especially annuals, I just yank it out, because first of all, we do crop rotation. So for example, right now, even though I'm getting a little bit of production from our tomatoes, it's not that getting an extra start on all my fall crops is worth pulling out the tomatoes. So you just have to do this kind of equation of if you're still getting a pound of tomatoes a week from each plant, then it's probably still producing pretty well. But if it's starting to die down a little bit, I wouldn't hesitate to remove the tomato.
Would it be okay to plant the lettuces there?
Yeah, lettuces are really low requirements for minerals and nitrogen, so they're a great crop to rotate in after a heavy feeder like a tomato.
Okay.
So yeah, either a lettuce or you put some legumes there as well to kind of recover some of the nitrogen. So some kind of beans, like a bush bean. Although
Okay.
it might, I don't know if beans love the heat, so you might want to put in a colder, if you do put a legume, I would put in something like a fava bean.
And that's a small, short space too, so it doesn't require a lot of space to grow a fava bean plant.
Okay.
Yeah, and tomatoes are one of those crops that are sensitive to the number of hours of sun. And now, as the number of hours are getting less and less, you'll see that those, even though they'll form a fruit, because like for instance, if you had good pollinators still at this time of the year, they'll form a fruit, but the fruit won't turn red. It'll just be green, and that may not be worth it. So it's good that you're pulling it out.
Okay, I'll be brave.
No, it's hard. Like, no, you're still producing, but
Oh, well, it's not. It hasn't put on a tomato in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, get rid of that. Don't feel bad. Tomatoes grow really fast.
Okay.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much. Well done. And next we have, let's see, Tanisha, are you here? Let me unmute. Tanisha, there you are. Hi,
Yes.
welcome. It's our first time seeing you.
Yes.
So I see that you are growing in 55123 in Wisconsin, Minneapolis,
Minnesota.
Minnesota. So you are the coldest person, I think, the one with the coldest climate.
Maybe, yeah. I think there was somebody, a Wisconsin person.
Yes,
They were
mosquito.
slightly
Right below you, Danielle.
The one
yeah.
next, yeah, Danielle, who's coming up, is Wisconsin. But actually, let's see. So she's in the 5947, and you in St. Paul are 5443. So you guys are pretty much the same. 54. You're even colder. Oh, I'm sorry. So what are you? Let's see. Let me review what your questions were, or go ahead and tell us what you want to tell us.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, I guess, what I can plant now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're about to get a frost. They keep talking about our first frost maybe being the first September frost since like 2000.
Wow.
So, but my garden is in kind of a protected area, so it might be okay for a little bit longer. But I don't know what I can plant like for fall or for like stuff that comes up in the spring.
So that you were the person I thought of when I thought of pulling up this planting calendar document. So let me just share that again, and Dave, just piggyback off of what I'm showing here, because I'm sure I'm not covering all the crops, but cold weather crops. So first frost is usually, you said September?
No, the first frost I think is October 5th.
Wow.
I think, I don't know if I looked it up correctly, but that's what I kind of found.
Right. Okay. So
kind of early.
yeah, I can see that, because then you guys dropped down to 34. This is October already. And then, okay. Wow. Well, then you'll just have to plant for the spring, in my opinion, I think. And
Well,
that's,
I think
yeah. Hmm?
I think you can do two. You can have two approaches. So, well, there's three, but one is you can definitely put in biennials. So things that are used to surviving frost. The only thing is starting them now. I'm not sure if there would be enough time for them to develop enough of a root system to survive. So things like carrots can survive very cold temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, because what they do is they convert starches in their root system into sugars, and that heats the plant up, so it keeps it alive even if it's below freezing. So with biennials, you have things like parsnips, carrots, and then all the alliums, so garlic, onions. If you're looking for onion bulbs to put in, look for long day onions, because short day. Sorry.
What kind of
It's
onions?
called long day onions.
Long gate.
Long day.
Day,
Oh, long day.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because onions are they're sensitive to the length of day. So some varieties that are further down in the south, they won't survive cold temperatures. They're called imaginatively enough short day onions. But long day onions are for the north, so they're used to cold temperatures. Most garlics will not have a problem surviving over the winter as well. Then you also have the option of creating what are called low tunnels. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before. So this is where it's kind of a little more
I don't
advanced.
really want to do anything. I know I belong to a CSA, and they have tunnels. I think theirs are high tunnels where they plant things, kind of like a greenhouse essentially.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the same kind of concept. It's just scaled down for raised beds.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to do that. Because
Yeah,
that means I
sure.
have to go out in the cold and do stuff.
No,
Next year, it'll be a goal for next year.
yeah, it's not something you have to do now. It's just something I'll point out that what we've done is there's a way to take aluminum conduit that you get from a big box store and bend it into hoops, and then we stretch like a breathable plastic. And what that does for us is it gives us like maybe a 7 or 8 degree bump. So things that could survive frost can now survive down to like 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So the third thing I was going to talk about is annuals that are hardy. I'm not sure if you have enough time really to get them going, but I thought I would list a few of the annuals that are pretty hardy for you to consider either trying them this year or trying again next year. So things like collards, let me try to think. Parsnips will survive. Beets are pretty hardy, and although it might be a little late to start beets.
I
Mosh.
don't pick beets anyway, so.
Okay, there you go. Mosh is a French. Most people don't know about it in the United States, but it's extremely frost tolerant. It's a self-sowing annual. That'll be the first thing in the spring that kind of pops up. So you won't see it now, really. You could, if you manage to get some seed, you just sprinkle it out on your yard. You won't see anything now, but come like February or March, you get a warm early spring day, and then all this mosh will just pop
Our
up.
spring doesn't come that early.
Well, what I mean is you'll get an occasional warm day. So when you get a little bit of snow melt, then in our area, we've had it pop up in January.
We had a snowstorm this past year on Friday the 13th in April. 13
Wow.
inches.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Well-
no, that was kind of unusual, but stuff like that happens here.
Wow.
Do you get a lot of like lake effect snow or
Oh
this is the low
no,
tunnel?
thank goodness. No, I've lived somewhere that gets that, and that's horrible.
Hmm.
We
So
had
this
is 2 years ago. We had a huge snowstorm, and this is our front yard. I didn't brace the low tunnels, and they kind of collapsed, but I was still able to kind of survive, keep some of the stuff alive underneath.
Wow.
So I'm a little bit better about bracing the stuff now, but the snow actually acts as a little bit of an insulator as well. The only thing is it tends to stretch the plastic, so you have to put cross braces as well. So it is possible with low tunnels. You can basically keep your growing season going even in the. We learned about it from a guy up in Maine who does 4-season growing using this technique. So he's been doing it for 30 years, and he just raves about. He has these unheated greenhouses, but he still gets full production in the wintertime.
Wow.
and these are examples of the mosh that Dave was saying. So these are the ones that come up, and we had ones that were in the ground, not in trays, and they just came up, as soon as the weather was warm as well.
So what do you do with those, and how do you spell that?
MACHE. And Tanisha, I'm taking notes, so I'm going to send you an email, and everybody here who we've spoken to, an email to follow up, so that you guys have it recorded and like written down. But yeah, MACHE is mosh.
So how do you eat that, or what?
So it's kind of like lettuce. It's got a kind of a mild buttery taste.
Okay.
But it's tiny. It's tiny.
It's tiny, so you need like tons of it. That's the only thing.
But at least you have some greens. It's almost like sprouting indoors. And that's another thing you can do, is you can grow indoors and make sure that you're still, especially in this season that it is cold, you're getting those vitamin C by sprouting sunflower seeds, like the ones that still have their shell on them. You can buy them from the grocery or you can order them online. And those things, like, dress your salads with them, dress your soups with them, your sandwiches, and then you're always constantly getting that nutrition even from inside just by sprouting.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still struggling with trying to figure out where I would grow anything inside, like start things. I don't have, I mean, I have a south-facing window, but that's where my kitchen table is.
Mm. Well, start with one thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be that big tray, 10 by 20 tray, although that's what I use in our house. And just fill it with soil, like a tray with soil, and then sprinkle your seeds in and leave it on your kitchen table, like where you eat, so you don't forget about it. Sometimes you can put it by your, if it's like too much of a hassle, fine, put it by your kitchen sink so you're still remembering, I have extra water the thing. And in 3 to 5 days, you have sprouts. It's like the first step. That's like the babyest step for like growers. I'm not sure. Let me see how many years you've been growing. I don't want to. You've been growing 3 to 5 years, so you know how to grow. So this is easy.
Well, kind of.
Definitely know. You can definitely do this. Just sprouting. And then, you may take a few weeks off, don't feel like it now, and then do it again whenever whenever the cold season comes in, you're like, oh, I need to boost my immunity. Start a sprouting tray again. I keep mine in the middle of the dining table so that I don't forget to just snip it, and I have scissors there, and we just put it on everything we eat. That way I don't have excuses like, it doesn't fit with what I'm cooking, or, it's just the dressing, sort of like a condiment. So that's an idea too.
Okay.
The other thing I've been playing around with this year is mushrooms. So I don't know if you're interested in mushrooms.
We have a mushroom webinar coming up October 18, that we haven't told anyone about yet, not many people about, but it's coming, and people who are mushroom growers, professional mushroom growers, are going to come to speak about that. So you'll be in the know soon enough.
Okay. So I guess for right now, should I be mainly planning for spring? Or I guess I don't really have a clear plan on what I should be doing.
All right, so good. So the first thing I think for you is to think, given your situation, what can you grow? Do you need like small growing, or because you know so much about growing, do you want to do it? Let's see.
Well, I don't know a lot about growing. I've just been playing around. Like I kind of researched like where I was going to put my garden. I'm very comfortable and confident where the location is. I think for my yard, it's the best location, most protected. It's south facing, so it gets the most sun, and it's protected from like the animals because it's on top of my retaining wall. So they don't tend to, except for the rabbits. I just am not good at figuring out like what things to plant together. If I'm supposed to be testing my soil, and I haven't done anything where I've started stuff like ahead of time. I usually cheat. I go to like the garden store and I buy the already
that's
half-grown
fine.
plant because our growing season is so short.
Yeah, that's fine too. Okay, I want you, this is just my personal, like, in the few minutes that we've been together, and you have to correct me and customize this advice according to what you think really works for you. But just from what I'm hearing from you, Tanisha, I would take these 3 months ahead of us and do a really good plan of that plot of yours. Like, I want to see a sketch, a real, a really good one, like with all of the details of spring and summer, and then the list of plants that you're thinking of growing. Because even though you do have a short period, we can extend that period. It'll be short the first year, the second year maybe, but we'll extend that little by little as you become more confident in, this was what came up. And as you become more familiar with your climate and your growing, how the vegetables grow. And then I would do something still that's growing practically indoors with those sprouts. because then you'll get used to just the art and science of how to start seeds and how to eat them and harvest them, and you would have instant harvest right away. And that applies to many of you who may want to just who are looking to the winter that way. You could have your gardens outside and still be doing sprouts. They'll still be healthy. But
I guess I should let you know that. Okay, I'm gonna sound like I really don't know anything.
uh-huh. No,
I
not
guess
at all.
gardening. I just thought there's one season, summer. Until I was listening on the, I think it was the last webinar, and I was like, oh, well, there's different seasons that you can plant. So you can plant stuff for spring and then plant stuff for summer and plant stuff for the fall. I had no idea.
Oh my goodness. Well, yes, we're learning. We're all learning, Tanisha. Do not be ashamed of that. Like, I definitely did not know anything when I started growing. I just killed everything, and when I started growing, I didn't want to grow, and my grandma, who was a green thumb, always forced stuff on me, and and now here I am, I'm teaching stuff. So people learn every year, and yeah, that's one of our missions, is to really have people growing all year round and try to extend that, because the quality of your food matters, and the joy it'll give you matters, because I want to see your face when the next time we meet and you've grown those sprouts. I bet you'll be a whole new person from that, just that act. So
if I don't fill them first,
and then you can say, hey, I grew this during the early winter time. So there. No,
I think the other thing, I think the other thing is, even if you have a short season, once we start to figure out with you the kind of perennials you like to grow, then perennials are a little bit they're a little bit better prepared for the changing of the seasons. So you'll get a better yield in a short season climate from perennials than you would from annuals, because annuals have to start.
I have 2 apple trees.
Okay, great. Are they already established, or?
Oh yeah, there's like a whole bunch of fruit I need to go pick right now. Yeah, they're actually very good producing trees.
Great.
Wow. Well, that's more than.
I sent pictures. I sent a picture of them too.
Oh, yeah. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I will look for that picture. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Well, congratulations with that apple tree. We will build a guild around it in years to come, in months to come. So.
Okay. So I guess my plan is to start growing some like simple things inside, like some sprouts.
Yes.
And start planning for next year, like in the spring, for the spring.
Yes, let's make that plan really good, because you can think like, it's just a sketch, but some people really go, into detail, and then you can do it so that you can time what am I going to go put in first. And the webinars and articles to come this month will help you plan that. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Well
Thanks.
done. Well done. Okay, Tanisha, I'm going to mute you, and Danielle, you are on.
Hey.
Oh, welcome, Danielle.
Hey, before I get started, I just wanted to mention real quick for Tanisha too, like something else she could possibly do this season is prepare that bed for spring planting, like work in some leaves, or like once they're off the trees, like that sort of like make sure that, I don't know, you add some compost.
So true. Yes.
I know that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Thank you, Danielle. And that goes for Andrea, Danielle, those of you who have been planting a few years more than the rest of us, please feel free to give your community input into this. We don't have a Facebook group because we intentionally do not want to create another group that everybody's going to join and then be online more. But we're trying to work a way to see how we can all help each other in a community organic way online without doing more social media.
And I will say, I've been growing since I was little. I remember planting gardens and stuff with my dad, but growing up too, gardening was always one season in Wisconsin. It was you might put in a few things in the spring, like you might get peas in early, but otherwise it was pretty much one season and then you're done. So I'm playing with the extending the season on either end, and it's kind of fun, just where I can grow right now. So I'm excited because I got a couple of cold frames on clearance, like they're
Whoa.
pre-built ones. So I'm gonna play around and see with what'll actually grow here, because I've seen like online that, hey, you can grow lettuce through the winter with snow, and I just have a really hard time wrapping my brain around that actually being possible. But we'll see.
Yeah.
So,
So well, you saw that picture of Dave. You can, there's a book that I would like to recommend that you can borrow from the library by Nikki Jabor. She has, now I can't remember her book.
She has a couple books, but the one that you're she's up in like Newfoundland or somewhere pretty far up in Canada, and so she's really familiar with like very cold winters. She has a lot of cold frames. She has a lot of room to grow.
Nikki Jabor?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to share the screen to show a picture of her book. I borrowed this book from the library, don't own it, but she always says she has 52 months of lettuce. So year round, she has lettuce from her cold frames.
Cool.
And she shows you how to do it in that book.
Fun. Yeah, I will say, even this year, I just didn't do well with lettuce. Like, I know I mentioned on the last call, we just focused on expanding the garden this year and actually getting it in. And by the time I actually had my place ready, it was like the end of May before I was getting stuff in, which with our short growing season doesn't give a lot of time. So I didn't do succession planting. I didn't do a whole lot. I got store-bought tomato plants in and store-bought peppers in and some raspberries from my grandma. And let me tell you, those tomato plants have been producing like crazy. So even though in my brain it's not a terribly successful garden because I didn't have much of a plan, which is why I joined your course. I want to just make better use of my space and have a good plan for next year. But I trimmed back my tomatoes last week and I had a 5-gallon bucket full of tomatoes.
Wow. That's this month in that your weather?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
For us, August and September tend to be the bulk of the crop.
Mm-hmm.
And then our first frost date is October 15th usually.
Yes.
But we can also have some warm weather after that. So like the stuff that's really, really tender won't last much beyond that, but you can get stuff much later. It just kind of depends. It's hit or miss depending what the weather does.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so your question was about raspberries. This is the first year for your raspberry plants, right?
It is.
Okay. So you probably know that they need a few years to establish. Like usually it's year 3 that they will really produce the most, just like strawberries. I don't know, Dave, what do you know about you? You're the raspberry 10 person.
Yeah, you had asked whether it's worth moving them around. I would say maybe if you have a lot of spare raspberry canes, but you have to remember every time you move a raspberry, it's like setting it back a year.
Right. Okay.
So if you really want to experiment, I would wait, especially if there's fruit, if it's producing canes this year. It tends to produce. It won't really produce fruit on the first year canes. It produces fruit on the second year, and the second year on the canes from the previous.
Yeah, the canes all came from my grandma's garden. So the plants I moved were mature plants. So I did get a small crop this year already. I think the part that kind of had me wondering is I went to my grandma's house last week and she got tons of raspberries on her plants for her fall crop because it's the everbearing kind that gives you a spring crop and then again in the fall, like lower on the. So I think I just need to be patient.
Yeah, I would give it a year. We have some fall gold raspberries. It's the same thing. They'll bear in the spring and the fall, and definitely like I've fiddled around with moving them around, and it kind of sets them back. They're pretty fiddly with the roots, getting the roots system established. But as long as they've been in your the same place for a whole year, I would wait till next year, and if you don't get good production next year,
Okay.
then I would move them.
I'm also just, they're in my big 12 by 24 like vegetable plot right now. I'm not
Oh.
convinced that's where I want them to stay long term,
Mhm.
but I don't have another site prepared for them yet. So yeah, it's
So
part of the
the-
plan that I'll get done this winter.
So Danielle, if you have, feel free to email, and for anyone, feel free to email us your sketches
Yeah.
and your, what you think will work. And like I mentioned in the first document, you can even, you can go so detailed as to take your what do they call it? Your plat map.
Yeah.
And that'll have like all the right measurements for you, so you don't have to go out and actually measure. That's like my shortcut. But when you do that, then you'll figure out like you have a home, a single family home or a townhome.
We do. We have a single family home.
All right. So there might be areas for perennials like raspberries around there.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot with the observation documents from that first month and really looking at where my son is and
Yes.
like before we expanded the garden, I had to do the survey, had the people come out and show where all the lines come into my property, like
Yes.
the utility stuff. So
Yes.
Yeah. So I've just
Yeah.
been doing a lot of observing this fall and trying to figure out where things could go.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so glad. That's the way you should
I'm
do
really
it.
excited for next summer, but
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe this spring. We can still get some spring and things in there. And then another person had asked about soil testing. And I think I am always an advocate for soil testing at least once. The first time you plant in your place, you have to have at least one time that you soil tested it before you figure out, hey, everything's growing and it's good. But have you ever done a soil test or not yet?
I did not. And I've added so much stuff to it already. Like when we raised the bed, I brought in other stuff. So I haven't done a soil test because I'm not sure where I should do it on my property that would give accurate results. Does that make sense?
Yes. So whenever they do a soil test, they always ask for look for 5 places, and it's basically an amalgamate of all the soil in your yard, which it shouldn't be, I think. So just test the parts that you're not sure of. If you've been putting good soil or compost or building up the soil in a raised bed, then you know that's fine. But then if you want to put your raspberries somewhere else in the actual yard, just see if there's any lead or other things that might be, or fertilizer runoff, or other things that your pH levels too, because somebody, Andrea, was asking about blueberries also in her front yard. Blueberries are acidic, so you want to see love the acidity of soil. So you want to see how the pH does in the area where your certain crops like blueberries, and generally all berries kind of like acidic, blueberries being the most. So just those kind of things.
All right, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Is that it? Yeah. Update.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of questions right now. I'm still
okay. Great. Well, I see. Oh, well, welcome back to school. Yes, I know we're pretty busy too. I'm sorry. So we're so glad that you're still planting. Go, Danielle. It's for our families that we do this, so it's great. And Lisa, welcome. I'm going to unmute you just because you're the other person here, and welcome. And when did you start with us? I'm so sorry that I'm not sure.
2 weeks ago. I'm brand new.
Oh, great. All right. So any questions so far? How are you finding everything? What are you growing? Where are you growing from?
I'm in Greeley, Colorado.
Oh,
so
wow.
In the plains there. So it's pretty dry.
Yes.
And I think we get our first frost around October 14th-ish, somewhere there. So this was my first time growing. We just bought a house last summer, and there was already 2 raised beds and a whole garden area that the previous owner had put in, but it was just covered in weeds. So I pulled all that out and I just gave it a whirl, and it does okay. It did okay, but the biggest hurdle is we have hail, and the hail comes in and just hammers it all. And everything just gets ripped to shreds and starts over. And I had that happen 3 times this summer. So
Mhm.
everything had to start over 3 times. And the last one was the early August. And so I'm just now getting a harvest from everything because it's just now growing back from that last hail. But now I've got the frost coming around the corner. So I'm just wondering, is there anything you can do about hail, or you just grow and
So
you lose it all?
no, I would put some sort of like strut supports, the same as that in that picture that we had. I don't know if you saw it earlier, where we had that aluminum bar. Let me see if I can pull it up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, as if you were going to put a low tunnel, but you're not yet. Maybe you will. maybe you will sometime.
I
But
think that could work because what happens is for some of my beds, I just leave those tubes in the whole year.
yes.
And then I don't know how realistic this is, but if you know that the hailstorm's coming, you might just be able to put some clear plastic over it. What kind of area are you planting in? Is it a large area or just a few raised beds?
So I have what's in there are 2 pretty large raised beds. They're 3 foot by 16 feet. But then all around it is just dirt and weeds. So I grew some just in the ground around them, some squashes and stuff that just took over. And then there's a dog run right next to it that just has rocks. And I'm thinking of maybe taking that over as well. And we don't have a dog.
Ah.
How big is the hail? Like, what kind of things did it destroy?
The first 2 hailstorms were like pea size, and then the third one in August was golf ball size.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
it just took it all away. But everything grew back except peas and cucumber. Aside from that, all my squashes grew back. My tomatoes hung in there, peppers. It beat up my cabbage, of course, but we still ate it. And the herbs were fine. Green beans were fine. Carrots were fine. And my onions were okay, except the tops were chewed up. Yeah.
Wow. Well, another thing to consider, so this would be short term, would be putting some sort of posts where you can put a cover for the hail if the hail is coming. We get those alerts. Did you get those alerts, by the way,
No.
that hail was coming? No?
No, it just hits.
Man, it's almost like, when you're in Mars or something, and there's like, oh, run for cover. But yeah, so just always be ready with those posts or those struts. But another idea that Sandy mentioned in the chat was maybe you might think of growing trees that would become hail barriers. The only thing though with that is like then the sun will get cut out, right?
Yeah.
The sun will get cut out, and you would need to wait a few years. So if you have like a dedicated vegetable annual bed, that might be hard.
One thing that's good is in Colorado, there's a lot of permaculture resources.
Okay.
It's a pretty big hotbed of grassroots gardening activities. So we can send you some connections because there's a great institute there that's been doing research for like 30 years. You're not at elevation though, right? So
We're at about 4,700 feet.
Okay, and you're arid. Like, how much rain do you get?
Like almost nothing except hail.
And does the hail melt, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's precipitation. We'll have to capture that water too somehow.
Yeah. We get a little bit of rain, but let's see. We
What's
get about
your zip code?
80634. It looks like it's about 14 inches a year of precipitation, I think.
Yeah, I think that's considered what they call cold dry lands. So temperatures, you're still temperate, right? Your temperatures are, like you have seasonal variations in your temperatures. It's just you don't get a lot of rain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you treat your growing season still like it's a temperate with the same rotations, but you have to account for the fact that you have to capture water. Or so you still have to mulch heavily, figure out what the water flow is on your land, that kind of stuff.
Okay, and then you mentioned that you, you till the first time, but we're not going to try to do that again so that the bacteria and the microbes that are establishing, the life that's establishing in your garden bed will proliferate, and we'll just build upon that. And that way, it'll also help with, when the cold weather hits, then it'll still be warm underneath because there's a lot of life in there. But yeah, like you said, lots of mulch, even 4 or 6 inches of mulch will be really, really good.
What kind of mulch?
So we usually use straw.
Okay.
If you are, do you close your bed for the season? Are you still thinking of planting stuff that'll come up in the spring, or how are
I
you?
have no idea. This was just my first time. I threw some stuff in and we went for it. And
Yeah, great. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
What are the tree species that are around you? Do you have mostly evergreens around you, or do you have quite a lot of deciduous trees as well?
it's all deciduous.
Okay, so that's great. So yeah, once those leaves start dropping, you can just gather those leaves. What we do is I actually got an electric shredder, and it's probably a little tedious, but I actually shred those things because I'm trying to make compost with it. But you can just put those leaves on your beds, and that's like free mulch. Because
Okay.
that'll break down. It may take 6 months to break down, but that's nature's free fertilizer / mulch.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. I was a part of your permaculture and small spaces webinar a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And you guys had briefly mentioned those of us in dry areas should have sunken beds and not raised beds.
Yes.
And of course, what was put in our yard is raised beds. So do I need to, he made them with cinder blocks.
Mm-hmm.
I could easily take the cinder blocks down and just do ground level. Would I do that?
Yeah, so you would dig it, and I think below ground level would be better, because what the thought behind that is so that when there is like precipitation or any water, snow that's going to seep in, it'll go and run. If it runs through the ground, it'll kind of deposit in your garden bed, in your sunken bed, and it's raised paths, sunken beds and raised paths. So we think those would be more effective. I mean, they've proven that to be more effective in the dry land areas. So if you could do that as a rehaul, if you wanted to do that,
I would say though, before you do like major structural change, that you observe the flow of whenever there is some kind of precipitation or something that's a water event. You see how that flows through your yard, because that'll give you some information about. Obviously, you don't want to put your sunken bed right at the top of where that flow is starting, or if it's flowing completely away from that place. But if you see that there's a good location that the water is flowing down to, then that would be a natural place to put a sunken bed. They're called infiltration basins. So they're dug below the surface, but there's no lip around them, so that the water, if there is water that's flowing, it'll just flow straight into the bed. Okay.
Well, we did have our soil tested just where the grass area is, and it's pretty much our whole property is all clay. And so when the sprinklers go off, it pretty much just pools up in the grass, and it takes it all day just to go in. And so it will even flood the garden area, which is all right now just dirt and weeds around the beds. And the previous owner put in some sort of a drainage system so it drains down when you first hit the beds and goes under the first bed and pools up between the two beds. So the whole, it's pretty marshy, and it even grows moss around the beds. So that's I feel like that's kind of messy. It's kind of a mess. We're not sure.
We'd have to think about that a lot more. I think definitely take that first document, that observation sheet document. This is your first year in your new house, first year's observation. You want to, note as many things as you can in it. And if you already have a marshy situation, well, one is that's a good thing for a dry land, but I still wonder about the wastage of water. Like if you want to, we don't want to, there's several things going on, we don't want to we don't want to solve all the problems all at once. Like we can't do that. We just want to be able to see which one we want to attack first, like which step. So you have water as an issue, meaning over water in your case, but in a dry land area. And then what to grow for this coming year, right? And then just other things that we may have missed, just observing. The hail was another problem. So maybe let's see, same thing for you, like these coming 3 months, even though you think, oh, it's the winter, I can't grow anything, you can definitely do a lot of observation and planning work. This is where I sketch a lot of what's going to happen in the spring, what's going to happen in the summer, what's going to happen in the fall, and what are my perennial things. So please send us I know you're new, might be overwhelming. Just send us as you go through the modules, send us the stuff that you're working on. Send us your filled out sheets and sketches, and we'll be happy to work to give you the feedback that you need.
Okay. All right.
Anything else, Dave, that I'm missing?
Yeah, I would just add that clay soil is actually not that bad because
Good.
nutrients are there. It's just a matter of breaking up the clay. Like in Northern Virginia, we have really bad clay and rocks. And what happens is as you add organic matter to the clay, it's kind of miraculous. It just becomes wonderful soil. So it's much better. The much worse situation would be sandy soil because you don't have the nutrients to start off with. Then you have to figure out, how do I keep the nutrients from flushing away?
So you have actually a really good ideal situation.
Oh, good.
Well, that's a one way of spinning it.
In terms of I'm starting, if I needed to have a place in Colorado to start with, clay soil is what you want to have. You don't want sandy, rocky soil.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, great. And I just planted a peach tree at the beginning in the spring, and it's just a little baby. And I don't know what I'm doing with it. Do we, for the winter, or do we just mulch it heavily and leave it? Or do I need
a full size peach tree?
It's only a year. It's only about a year.
Sorry, what I mean is it going to be a full size eventually?
It should be. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can send you some tips about things to do with fruit trees in terms of how you feed them. I went to an awesome workshop. I have his book here. He's way more detailed than I could ever be.
Nice.
But he goes into how there's a lot of questions for orchardists, how to keep all the pests off their fruit. And most of them just give up and spray them with pesticide, or they'll do something called integrated pest management, which is kind of like pesticide light. But this guy's amazing. He does everything organically, and he's got a lot of these kind of things that he's experimented with. So I can send you a few of the tips that he has in terms of how to feed the roots of fruit trees so that they establish a mycorrhizal relationship with the fungi in the soil. So it boosts their immunity as well. So it's some really good tips about how to feed stone and palm fruit trees.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks.
Tanisha said, I would like to learn a lot more about caring for my apple trees. She has problems with Japanese beetles. So that book is really good for all around fruit tree care. And I wrote it on the chat. Michael David Phillips, The Holistic Orchard. You could borrow that as well. But in terms of Japanese beetles, yep. So since we are at 9/11, Tanisha, we're just gonna reply to your the natural pesticide for that specific bug in the email that will follow you guys' this call. So look out for that in tomorrow or the day after. But thank you. So this is just about the time that we have, and it's really been a joy touching base with each one of you and seeing your gardens and just talking about your gardens. So I'm so glad you're here. We'll have another one next month. And in the meantime, if you need anything, just shoot us an email for now and check on the GIY resources. Dave, any last thoughts?
No, I think you summed that up pretty well.
All right, guys, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much. Have a good night. Happy growing. Bye, you all.